When Ansel Crane, the prince of the Beijing circle, rejected the suitor, he casually pointed to me, who was selling beer. I like her like this. Ansel Crane gave me a tip of 10,000 afterwards. The second time a rich lady came after me, Ansel Crane pointed at me casually. Third tilde fourth tilde. I easily made $40,000. The fifth time, Ansel Crane pushed me against the wall as soon as they met. Do you think I look like a sheep? I'm a layman who is busy, running around for money, and I really don't understand the brain circuits of rich and noble sons. I can only try not to let my expression become a black question mark face, and carefully pretend to be stupid. Pleasant goat tilde beautiful goat tilde lazy goat tilde boiling goat. Ansel Crane's face instantly darkened. I subconsciously pressed my whole body against the wall behind me, and I didn't dare to gasp loudly. The front desk guy mistook me. Why don't you say that Ansel Crane is alone? What about the manager? Ansel Crane has arrived. Why hasn't he come to serve? I secretly regret that I shouldn't have been greedy for Ansel Crane's ill-gotten gains. Seeing that I didn't speak, Ansel Crane scoffed. I said, do you think I look like a sheep? Catch me wool. I realized instantly. A few days ago, a rich lady chased Ansel Crane here, and the eldest young master leaned lazily on the sofa, and casually pointed to me who was selling beer. I like her like this. The rich lady turned her head, and saw me wearing a pinduoduo floral dress, as if she had suffered a great insult, and left angrily. Ansel Crane and a group of young ladies are regular customers of this high-end business club, and even this box has been reserved for Ansel Crane for many years. On my first day here, I was told by my manager that these people couldn't be messed with. I couldn't afford to hide, so I pretended I didn't hear anything, and didn't see anything and walked out the door. But Ansel Crane stopped me, and gave me a tip of 10,000. Well, for the sake of money, in Ansel Crane for the second, third, fourth. I happened to be there when I was chased by the girls. Then I got a tip of $40,000. As for the contempt of the rich ladies, what does it matter? I don't care. My grandmother is still lying in the hospital. What is more important than money? So this time, when I heard the front desk guy say that Ansel Crane had arrived, I pushed the door as usual, but I didn't expect that Ansel Crane was alone. Took advantage of others and was caught red-handed by the bitter master, and wanted to ask for it back. I knew that I was wrong first, and the money that had been spent on my grandmother's treatment had a little more of that joy to cover up the shame, and all of it came up at this moment. Yes or no? I bowed my head and apologized, and begged for forgiveness, when I was interrupted by a group of people who burst in. The man in front of him carried a bottle of red wine. Ansel Crane, why didn't you squeak and come early? The private room was instantly full, and I shrank aside to minimize my presence, sneaking to the door while there were many people. Someone stopped me. Beauty, let's not buy your wine today, you can pour us a bar right here. Don't you have long hands? Can't you drink what you pour yourself? Ansel Crane sat down on the couch next to him, his tone impulsive. Have you taken gunpowder? The bottle was handed to me. Beauty, do me a favor, the tip won't be missing when it's over. The heart that wanted to leave was pulled back again, and I took the bottle and went to the side to sober up. The atmosphere in the private room instantly became lively, and I dutifully opened, and sobered up. Suddenly, someone said, aren't you the beautiful woman? You've been crushed by Ansel Crane several times. Everyone looked at me, and I stopped with my hand on the red wine. Eve Wallace. When someone called my name, I looked over in surprise and it turned out to be Tammy Hansen, a classmate from the same department with a different supervisor. In school, her tutor was always pressed by my tutor, and the two professors had arguments from time to time. The students under the door secretly didn't deal with it, but they were polite on the face, until I posted a few articles before her, and my tutor secretly showed off at the meeting, and after that, Tammy Hansen saw me in all kinds of yin and yang weirdness. Just like now. The place where you work is really getting more and more advanced. It's very good, you make a lot of money, and you don't delay doing experiments and publishing articles. I didn't want to pay attention to it, but she had to take an inch. Did Candace Valentine introduce you? There are a lot of rich people here. Tammy Hansen, just say what you want, don't be so weird. I put down the corkscrew and looked directly at Tammy Hansen. She looked around at the people in the private room and smiled contemptuously. It's nothing, I just don't think you're like that. What do you usually pretend to be at school? and when you have the chance, you don't want to climb into bed and become a phoenix. What? You don't want to climb into my bed? And what are you doing with me? Ansel Crane played with a lighter and said nonchalantly. The faces of the room were wonderful, and Tammy Hansen's face was even more blue and white, and the eyes that looked at me were about to breathe fire. Tammy Hansen, I won't fight you on the track of climbing the bed, but you will be legally responsible for making me a yellow rumor. I don't want to lose my part-time job at the clubhouse, but Tammy Hansen, who used to have a face-to-face relationship with me, is now clearly trying to ruin my reputation and trample me to death, probably because I blocked Ansel Crane a few times and got in the way of her. In that case, let's tear your face. Your mentor values you so much and takes you to do projects every day. Why is he still short of money? Why are you here to tell me? You say I'm a rumor. Do you have any proof? Tammy Hansen blushed and stiffened. Proof. I have it. Candace Valentine stood in the doorway and pointed to the camera in the corner. Eve Wallace can give her a copy if she needs it. Candace Valentine, the eldest lady, changed 3 dormitories within a month of the start of school, and the leaders of their hospital couldn't arrange for us to have vacant beds. That's where I live. My grandmother suddenly had cancer, and I didn't have much time in the dormitory except for classes and part-time jobs. But she and Candace Valentine got along quite well. She was like a lioness who was very satisfied with her new territory, and she assigned me to her territory, which she thought was a weak chicken. Because of my grandmother's illness, I cheekily made an IOU and borrowed money from her, but I didn't expect that this club was also hers. It's just your brain, and I don't know how to get into graduate school. What's wrong with Eve Wallace coming to my clubhouse to take a part-time job? Are you getting in the way of crawling into bed? Candace Valentine has always had an unforgiving mouth, and since she became a roommate, she has often deflated Tammy Hansen. In the silence of the room, Tammy Hansen got up and walked away. Candace Valentine dragged me away and criticized me harshly, from not looking for her for lack of money, to going to the clubhouse for not telling her, to being greedy for Ansel Crane's money. You are greedy for his money, why don't you be greedy for mine? Is my money not fragrant? You don't really like Ansel Crane, do you? I looked at her with a black question mark on my face. Huh? It's okay if you don't, Eve Wallace, you don't have money for him. You trust me? I nodded violently. Don't I believe that? Men really didn't engage in money. Candace Valentine lent me another sum of money and introduced me to a part-time tutor. After going to the hospital to see my grandmother, I braved the sun in the spring afternoon all the way to the student's house with a subway and a shared bicycle. Candace Valentine introduced him, naturally a wealthy man, who lives on the side of a quiet mountain, on the outskirts of the city, which is said to be an excellent place for feng shui. It's just that this student is not very blessed by good feng shui, and his foundation is very poor. After an afternoon of class, both of us were dizzy, and when we got downstairs, we found that there was more than the student's father in the living room. There was also a man who was drinking Coke and playing chess with him. I went up to say goodbye to Jackson as usual, and ran to the entrance of the community as soon as I got out, praying that the shared bike I was riding was still there. But there is only an empty wind at the entrance of the community, and there is a security guard standing with a cold face. I had no choice but to walk towards the city and see if I could get a taxi. The late spring evening breeze was cool and comfortable, but I didn't want to stay. I just wanted to get back to the city as soon as possible. A car that I didn't recognize, but which was so expensive at first glance, stopped, and I subconsciously glanced back and saw only half of my face with clear lines. I turned around and walked on. Whoa. Are you a passenger with tail number 2258? The passenger I took the order is gone. Can I give you a ride? Probably out of boredom and wanting to have fun, I didn't want to pay attention to it. Hey, White, let you gather wool. You don't want to. Ansel Crane got out of the car and walked over and looked at me, with one hand on the open door. Get in the car, you're going to have to walk all the way back. You have to go until tomorrow. His invitation was so sincere that I was a little scared, but I had to rush to the hospital to see my grandmother when I got back, so I got into Ansel Crane's car after thinking about it. Thank you, Ansel Crane. I sat in a proper manner, not daring to move or look around. I sincerely thank you for the help. This thank you is sincere. The generous tip before didn't change you for a word of thanks. I laughed awkwardly and finished the mamation. I haven't seen you again, so it's not because I'm afraid I'll get the money back, right? Just in time for a red light, Ansel Crane stopped to look at me. I continued to laugh, and I didn't go to work at the clubhouse since, so naturally he couldn't see me. How so? I can't thank you enough. The red light turned green, and Ansel Crane silently started the car. When I was about to get to school, I suddenly asked, "Are you short of money?" "Hey, Jackson is divorced and has a kid that old." "Hey." Ansel Crane tilted his head and looked at me. "Instead of being a stepmother, you might as well consider me." "No, he's sick." But I didn't dare to argue with that. Seeing that I was about to turn a corner and arrive at school, I hurriedly spoke. "Ansel Crane, here it is. I'm just going down to buy something." As twilight wore on, Ansel Crane stopped his car. "Thank you so much, Ansel Crane." The interior of the car is dimly lit, but Ansel Crane's eyes are as bright as stars. "Really thank me? Why don't you really think about me?" Ansel Crane may have been seriously ill, and I ran away. Before I met Candace Valentine, I never knew there was such a way to make money. The summer auto show in Peking was packed, and with Candace Valentine's recommendation, I just had to put on makeup, put on the dress and dress provided by the organizer, and stand by a luxury car I didn't know for a day. The key is that it pays well. It's just that I'm really not used to wearing high heels, and I'm very tired after a while. Can only take turns to change the center of gravity, to rest under the cover of the long skirt. "Yo Tilda, isn't this our Eve Wallace? Why don't you go to the club to sell wine today, and instead go on stage to sell and laugh?" I glanced down the stage to the haunting Tammy Hansen and her little sisters. Eve Wallace is short of money again. If you are short of money, you should not come to this station, you should go to the school gate, and take the bus. What kind of car is this? I even invited you to be a model car, and I am not afraid of falling prices. I don't want to care, but there are so many people at the car show that they deliberately say these things loudly, so that more and more people gather in front of the car. Everywhere I looked, there were people pointing at me, and the embarrassment of the moment made me want to rush off the stage and slap Tammy Hansen in the face. But I could only grit my teeth and maintain a frozen smile, and stood motionless by the side of the car. "It's okay," I consoled myself. "Who knows me? If she wants to say it, she can say it, and the opposite side doesn't have much money." One of the girls who was traveling with Tammy Hansen saw that I couldn't hold back, and even came up to pull my skirt, while laughing. "Look, she is still wearing Chanel haute couture, but it seems to be fake." Could it be that I climbed into Ansel Crane's bed, and didn't even earn a single piece of money? I clapped her hand away in anger. "If you do this again, I'll call the police." Tammy Hansen deliberately played dumb and asked exaggeratedly, "Hey, didn't you get off the Ansel Crane 2 days ago? Did he return you? It seems that you haven't made it home in bed, so let's go back and write your paper." Tell you, I can post as many papers as I want, but no matter how many articles you post, you will still be a social animal in the end. People have to accept their fate. You know, I could see clearly that Tammy Hansen was explicitly provocative, as if watching me stink and rot was the happiest thing for her. I don't know why she's so hostile to me, just because Ansel Crane likes me like that. What can I do? Even if I win the quarrel with her, she will only lose a little face, but I will be retaliated by her for losing my job. Then I can only let them insult me from above. I was cold and a little desperate. "Did you go out today without brushing your teeth? And here he is squirting feces. Every day is like eating yellow waste to make other people's yellow rumors. I'm afraid that if it's not your own chickens and dogs, there are too many things to steal, men and prostitutes. So you think that others are the same as you?" "Oh Tilda, yes. Not only are people with better grades than you, but you can't lick the male god. It's love at first sight with someone, and you're so jealous that you hit the wall every night and break your brain." "Right." Tammy Hansen laughed a little exaggeratedly. "Joke. I'm jealous of her. Jealous that she is holding on to Ansel Crane, and climbing out of bed. Is she still a free bed partner? Ansel Crane has never had a girl around." She looked at me. "You're the first. It's an honor." "Right. It's a pity that it was returned." I was so angry that I raised my hand to slap her. "I don't want today's salary, and I don't want my face." Candace Valentine moved faster, grabbed Tammy Hansen by the shoulder, pulled her to the ground, and slapped her. Tammy Hansen screamed, tearing at Candace Valentine. Tammy Hansen's little sisters didn't dare to touch Candace Valentine, and they screamed in circles one by one, fearing that Candace Valentine would suffer. I threw off my heels, and rushed up to grab Tammy Hansen's arm. Candace Valentine! Candace Valentine! Someone squeezed through the crowd and strode over to protect Candace Valentine, pulling her behind her. But Tammy Hansen was still scratching Candace Valentine, and Candace Valentine, who was being guarded, raised her leg and kicked Tammy Hansen on the thigh. When she saw this, Tammy Hansen screamed and fell backwards, one hand still clutching my arm. Before I could react, I was pulled to the ground and my head hit the ground. My left wrist fell right on the edge of the car booth, and I couldn't help but cry out in a moment of sharp pain. The number of spectators around it has increased instead of decreasing, and it is as noisy as a vegetable market. The pain in my wrist seemed to weaken all my 5 senses, and there was an invisible barrier that isolated me. I tried to clench my fists, and the pain was in my heart, and all my strength was broken. Someone put their arms around my shoulders and pulled me up, half hugging and half dragging. Ansel Crane's face was visibly anxious, and it took a few moments for my mouth to open and close before I could understand that he was asking me what was hurting. Wrist. I hit my wrist. What about Candace Valentine? Is there anything wrong with Candace Valentine? I'm here. Eve Wallace. Let's go to the hospital. Candace Valentine pulled Ansel Crane, but Ansel Crane didn't get out of the way, helping me out. The crowd moved out of the way, and Tammy Hansen was surrounded by the little sisters, her head clutched, and her eyes chasing me with resentment like a snake. I took a film in the hospital, and the doctor said that it was just a bone crack, and it would be fine for 10 days and half a month with a plaster. It's just a knock on the head, but it's not a big deal. Candace Valentine exhaled heavily. Eve Wallace, I'm glad you're okay. Tammy Hansen, that madman. It's time to see a doctor. You're embarrassed to say that you, 2 girls dare to do it. The boy who had been following Candace Valentine reprimanded. Ansel Crane didn't say anything, only asked, is it okay for you to be in the dormitory by yourself for the past 2 days? Do you want to? It, and me, Candace Valentine interjected. You don't have to think crookedly. Thank you so much this time, Ansel Crane. Ansel Crane snorted and got up, and walked away without saying a word. It happened to be the hospital where her grandmother was, and Candace Valentine said to go home, and pack some things and go back to her dorm room in the evening. I went to my grandmother's hospital room, and she was asleep on a drip. I touched my grandmother's back and buttocks. It was clean and refreshing, and it seemed that the nurse took good care of her. I got up and went to the doctor's office to ask about my grandmother's condition. At present, the situation is improving, and as long as the body function is well recovered, the chances of successful surgery will also increase. I was very happy to hear this, thanked the doctor, and then went back to the ward. My grandmother woke up and saw me in a cast on my left hand, and asked me worriedly what was wrong. It's okay, I just accidentally fell down, and the doctor said it was a cracked bone, and it will be fine in a week or 2. Seeing that I promised to be okay in every possible way, my grandmother relieved herself. Eve Wallace, I don't think it's okay. Let's get out of the hospital and go back. Just rest. Grandma, don't worry, I'm rich. You will cooperate with the doctor, and when you are well, we will go and see the flag raising. I endured my sadness and talked to my grandmother for a while, and only then did I get up and leave, when I saw my grandmother fall into a deep sleep again. In today's farce, I didn't talk about the salary, and I was injured. I sighed and walked out of the hospital gate, and walked to the bus stop. A Cayenne Crunch stopped, and I knew the brand because Candace Valentine had one. Get in the car, I'll send you. Ansel Crane wears sunglasses and looks straight ahead. I hesitated for a second before stepping forward. Ansel Crane, thank you for helping me today. I know it's different from you, but if I have the chance, I'll repay you. Thank you. To Ansel Crane, I am now grateful. As for the rest, I can't afford it, so I won't have the slightest idea. I turned and walked forward, only to hear a bang and someone grabbed me by the shoulder, forcefully but carefully avoided my left hand, and shoved me into the passenger seat. I didn't even dare to talk to Ansel Crane all the way. His face was so stinky, and I didn't know how I mess with him, by saying thank you. When I was about to get to school, I was about to say get off here, but the car stopped. Then a black bag was thrown into my arms. What is this? When I opened it, it was a bundle of $100 bills. What do you mean, Ansel Crane? He took off his sunglasses, and his eyes were cold. When Candace Valentine didn't go, Tammy Hansen insulted you so much, and you didn't squeak? Didn't you just do it for money? I didn't react, but Ansel Crane was furious. Just for more than 10,000 yuan, you didn't react when others insulted you so much. You're short of money, aren't you? It's all for you. I shook off his hand, and I was a little angry. What? Are you trying to keep me? Seeing that he was stunned, I laughed out loud like a self-deprecating laugh. We've only met a few times, and you're not going to tell me you like me, are you? Ansel Crane grabbed a handful of hair in annoyance. Isn't it obvious that I like you? Your heart is stuck with lard. Wrap up. That's what you think of me. If it weren't interesting to you, the first time I tipped you, there wouldn't be a story behind it. I've never chased a girl, but I'm sincere to you. My heart beat hard, but only once. His liking can be withdrawn at any time. But after he pulled out of the quagmire, I had to climb out by myself. I'd like to believe that you're sincere right now, but I don't have a crystal plate right now, or even a cloth pocket, to treasure your sincerity. Sincerity is very expensive, and besides, a person like you who is in the clouds may not necessarily cherish the sincerity of others. I got out of the car and walked, all the way forward, not daring to look back. Because of my wrist injury, I didn't look for any other part-time job, so I went to Jackson's house every other day to give Jiang Yan a lesson. Miss Candace Valentine even pushed the party and went shopping, and every time she picked up the car, she pretended to casually ask me if I knew anything about Ansel Crane. I shook my head, and then I heard that Ansel Crane didn't know what to smoke and ran abroad, and his friends couldn't reach him when they called and messaged him. Looking at Candace Valentine's inquiring and gossipy look, I was helpless. I really don't know. I don't even have his wechat. Okay. 2 weeks later, Candace Valentine accompanied me to the hospital to get my cast removed. Being able to move freely like a normal person, a long-lost ease. Candace Valentine and I went to see her grandmother, who was in good shape, and talked to her for a while before leaving. On the way back to school, I thought about what the doctor said would be in a few days, and if things were good, I would be ready for surgery. This is probably the best news my grandmother has heard since she was diagnosed with cancer. For several days, my grandmother and I were dreaming about life after I was discharged from the hospital. But within a few days, my grandmother's situation took a turn for the worse. Is there really no way? Judging from the results of the examination, there is really little hope. But the results of the examination a few days ago were clearly operable. And this is less than a month. The doctor sighed. No one can say how fast or slow this disease will develop. It all depends on the will of God. I looked at the back of the doctor shaking his head and walking away. But it was like being in the cold winter, and I couldn't move. It's all my fault. Obviously, if I had brought my grandmother to see a doctor earlier, I could have raised enough money earlier, and my grandmother would have been fine. But I messed it all up. It's that I'm useless. I staggered down the stairwell, tears streaming down my face and my vision blocked. But someone stood in front of me, the warmth of his fingertips passing through a tissue that wiped his tears. The line of sight gradually became clearer, and the Ansel Crane, who had not been seen for a long time, gradually became clearer. What's going on? Crying like this? How many more times will I let you gather wool? I choked up and couldn't speak. And he didn't hurry, just stood there looking at me. Why was he always seen when I was embarrassed? The cries and tears that could still be held back are not known at the moment, and they can't bear it at all. My mind was blank, as if I could only cry. I don't know how long it took, but the tears stopped, and my thoughts returned. Thank you, Ansel Crane. Don't thank you for coming and going. I'm a promiscuous and heart-loving person anyway. After a long silence, Ansel Crane spoke again. I've already asked Dr. Zhang about your grandmother. He is an authority in this field. Thou shalt mourn. I looked up at him, and tears fell again. If you want to continue to let your grandmother receive treatment, I can lend you money first. If you want to make your grandmother comfortable and decent in her final days, I know a good private hospital. If you agree, you can send Grandma over today. I went to see my grandmother in the ward, and she had been awake less and less in the past 2 days, and she was so thin that she only had a handful of bones left. I waited for a long time before my grandmother woke up for a moment. Eve Wallace is here. Why did he lose so much weight? I held my grandmother's thin hand, but I couldn't speak. My Eve Wallace suffers. Grandma is useless, and she will drag you down when you are old. My throat was sour, and I shook my head desperately. No, Grandma, you'll be fine. I just dreamed of your mother, who, along with my mother, is coming to pick me up. Don't waste any more money. You can keep it and live well. It's just that my Eve Wallace will be on her own from now on. But what can I do? I couldn't speak anymore, and I grabbed my grandmother's hand and cried, Grandma, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I still took my grandmother to the same hospital that Ansel Crane said. Seeing my grandmother's brow stretched and falling into a deep sleep after taking the medicine, I was relieved to leave. There were many people and cars at the entrance of the hospital, so I walked down the road, trying to find a wide intersection to take a taxi back to school. I wanted to cry while walking, and I was the only one on all the roads in the future. When Ansel Crane's car stopped, I was at a loss. Why are you here? Ansel Crane didn't speak for a while, but there was a lot of emotion in his eyes. I'll pick you up. I can go back myself. I didn't mind if I said I was promiscuous. Why do you mind? I knew he was trying to lighten my mind, but I pulled the corners of my mouth and couldn't laugh. Well, don't force a smile. Get in the car. I didn't say no. Thanked him and got in the car. The road was quiet until I got out of the car. I picked up my phone and asked Ansel Crane, can I add your WeChat? Ansel Crane turned his head to look at me, picked up the QR code, and handed it to me. I clicked on the ad, and then transferred the 40,000 yuan. Ansel Crane didn't take it, glared at me and asked, what do you mean? I hesitated for a moment before answering. The first time you tipped before, it was a surprise to me. The next 3 times, I did it on purpose, for the sake of my grandmother. Although it is not above board, I can only let go of morality. Right now, I'm ashamed, just to pay you back. I've said it many times, but it's true. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Without waiting for Ansel Crane to react, I quickly got out of the car. He was born in a family of gold and jade. Although he is a little flamboyant, but he has his own upbringing and demeanor. Those who walk in darkness are blessed if they can have a bright moon to illuminate a part of the way. Ansel Crane didn't collect any money and didn't move. After a day, the money was automatically returned. I read the return message for a while, clicked exit, and didn't open the chat page with him again. My grandmother saw that her time was running out, so my boss and I took a leave of absence and spent every day in the hospital with her, until Candace Valentine's birthday. I've never been to any reunions with my classmates, but Candace Valentine is different. I thought I'd be late, so I left with gifts and blessings, but I didn't expect Candace Valentine to pull me to the bartender. I know you're still in a hurry to see your grandmother, but why are you embarrassed to let you leave as soon as you come? At least take a break, and I'll ask the bartender to mix a low proof for you. I sat down and watched her pull up the wine list twice, then pointed to a pink glass to show the bartender. Then he talked to me for a while, saw that the wine was ready, threw me a wink, and went to greet the guests. The pink liquor is beautiful, and the taste is sweet and sour, and I feel a little fluttery when I drink it. It's like in a dream. Hey, Ansel Crane, why is here? What is he talking about? I must have said something like that I was uninteresting, but he's really a good guy, and he's still a good guy, who is so handsome that he blows up. If you have a good time with Ansel Crane, it won't be a loss. I had the audacity to hold his hand, dangling in front of me. You say you like me. Don't you just want to sleep with me? I don't like you that much, but I'd love to sleep with you, but not today. I have to go see my grandmother. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't. I finally got off the bar stool on the table, but I threw myself straight forward. Throw yourself into a warm, dry embrace. I tried to struggle to get up, but my body didn't listen to my brain, and it was like a switch had been pressed, and I was completely in darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was blindsided for a minute before I could pick up my memory. The room was unfamiliar, but luckily the clothes were still from yesterday. The door was ajar, and as soon as I stepped out, I saw Candace Valentine sleeping soundly on the back of the couch. There was also a man on the other side of the couch, also asleep. It's Ansel Crane. I didn't know what to do with the situation in front of me, but Ansel Crane had already woken up. When he first woke up, his nasal voice was a little heavy. Are you awake? I nodded, looking at Candace Valentine on the other side, looking loveless. Eve Wallace, you've finally woken up, and I'm not going to let you drink anymore. Heh, a glass of wine will knock you out. This man, he's not human. Candace Valentine pointed at Ansel Crane. If you want me to watch you here with him. Hey Tilda, he also got a video camera, for fear that I would tarnish his innocence. You don't want to scribble the two of us on the internet, do you? I don't want to be scolded by my dad. Heh, just you. Who wants to be in the same story as you? Stop being narcissistic. Ansel Crane didn't hear it, and turned to me and asked, would you rather have breakfast and go back or go straight to the hospital? I was just about to answer when my phone rang. Eve Wallace, your grandmother isn't doing well. Let's get to the hospital now. For a moment, my mind went blank. Ansel Crane saw that my face was not right, and immediately put down his coffee cup. Is there something wrong with my grandmother? Come with me. Probably because I was so frightening that I was so depressed. Candace Valentine quickly got up and helped me up, and followed Ansel Crane to the parking lot. It wasn't until I saw my grandmother that my soul seemed to return to my body. Grandma, Grandma, but no matter how much I shouted, the little old lady who was lying on the hospital bed, thin and suffering from illness, just opened her eyes and looked at me with great difficulty, and never responded. My mind went blank until a long tick sounded, and a tidal wave of sadness came rushing over me, and without an exit, it turned into tears and rushed out. Feeling cold, I wanted to call my grandmother again, but I couldn't say a complete word. Candace Valentine rubbed her arm around my shoulder, and Ansel Crane whispered, condolences. I don't know how long it took. Ansel Crane leaned over and asked me, Eve Wallace, do you have any plans for Grandma's death? My parents died young, and I lived with my grandmother since I was a child. From time to time when I was very young, she told me from time to time to be strong and self-reliant, and although it was tiring, never rely on others. But I thought, I still have my grandmother. Grandma will leave someday, and when the time comes, Eve Wallace will come here and dig a pit and bury her. No, my grandmother wants to accompany me to Beijing, to Shanghai, and abroad. At that time, I had countless dreams about the future with my grandmother, but when parting came, I realized that I didn't have time for anything. Ansel Crane comforted me and told me that regret is the norm in life, but I still can't let go of myself. I managed to deal with my grandmother's funeral. Scrub and change clothes for your grandmother. Contact the funeral home. Contact the cemetery of your hometown. It wasn't until that handful of ashes was held in my arms that I really felt that I was really the only one in the future. Ansel Crane was with me all the way back to my hometown, where I buried my grandmother in the cemetery north of the village. In front of the newly completed tomb, I finally couldn't help crying. After crying, I went back to the old house to collect my grandmother's relics. In the future, it will probably be difficult to come back. I still have schoolwork to finish and a lot of places to go. I still have to listen to my grandmother and live this life well. On the return car, Ansel Crane was on the side wearing headphones to handle official business. I closed my eyes and suddenly remembered what Candace Valentine had said to me the night before I came back. Eve Wallace, while Ansel Crane is pretty solid for now, I warn you that it's best not to dive headlong into it. There is no room for sincerity in this circle. I've seen a lot of marriages that aren't so well matched, and as a result, the sweet couple of years is good, and in the end they either end up in divorce, or they live in the name of their wives like ashes. Judging from your current grades, and the importance that your mentor attaches to you, money, as long as you want to earn, just rely on a few patents in your hand. I can guarantee that you will make a lot of money, so stay sober, don't get too deep, turn his connections into yours, at least be familiar. Don't wait for him to do everything he has done before you wake up crying. Miss Ben won't care about you then. Candace Valentine is always like this, and care is hidden under real and ugly words. I'm not in the mood to think about that right now, though. Find the dead phone from the bag. Charge it with a power bank, and the message will swipe the screen as soon as it is turned on. Ansel Crane suddenly reached out to block the phone screen. Stop looking at your phone. Let's sleep a little longer. I was suspicious, brushed his hand away, and opened it. The message was dense, and I found Candace Valentine's message to open it, skipping a long paragraph of swearing, and scribbling on it to click on a link. The page redirected to a post on the school's confession wall. It turned out that someone anonymously submitted an article saying that a female graduate student of the Institute of Chemical Technology had a withdrawn personality in school and looked like a good student, but in fact, her private life was chaotic. She mingled in off-campus entertainment venues, and she fell in love with a big man in the name of selling alcohol, and they also had a spring supper together in the penthouse suite of a 5-star hotel. Finally, I accompanied a video of Ansel Crane carrying me into the hotel that day. The direction is obvious, and many people in the comments say, it can't be Eve Wallace, right? I swiped a few pages of comments, and it became more and more unsightly. Eve Wallace, really? She's usually silent, so I can't really see it. What do you know upstairs? It's just such a woman. It's fun in private. I don't know how many godfathers I've been with for a long time. This man is so young and handsome. Isn't he deceived by her? Some people also said, people may just fall in love normally. Why are they so malicious to girls? Come on, do you know who the man is? It's Ansel Crane, the prince of the Beijing circle. I said that they are in love normally. Do you believe it? It's not like you're trying to make money. I was trembling with anger that someone who had never been with me was so slandering me online just because of a candid video that I had edited. I'm sorry, I didn't think it through that day. And Candace Valentine couldn't hold you up because she drank a little too much, so I carried you. Actually, Candace Valentine was in the back, but someone cut it out. Just now Candace Valentine said that she had gone to the hotel to ask for the video of the day. I'm going to make those who slander you pay. When I was almost at school, I wanted to get out of the car. Ansel Crane kept driving all the way downstairs to my dorm room. Eve Wallace, you're not wrong. It's the dark-minded people who only spread rumors on the internet. This matter will be resolved tonight. You don't have to worry about it. Just keep your head up. His gaze was gentle but firm, and my originally angry and restless heart suddenly settled down. Can you send me the video? Since she is bent on destroying me, how can I be a turtle with a shrunken head? Thank you. Do you want to be so polite now? I thought we were good friends at the very least. Because I am a trusted friend, I should thank you even more. Ansel Crane was stunned for a moment, and a smile spread. Let's go up and get some sleep. On the way back to the dormitory, there were many people, and the eyes that fell on me were inquisitive and contemptuous, but I just couldn't see them. As soon as the door of the dormitory closed, he threw himself into the bed after packing his luggage. There is still a battle to be fought at night. How can you not rest well? As soon as I woke up at night, I saw a video of Ansel Crane sending me to the hotel lobby. He simply tied his hair, opened his laptop, and posted what had happened to the school along with the video. After all this, I ordered a takeout and started eating. As soon as I found out the electronic mustard, Candace Valentine called me on it to go and see the school confession wall. Is there a problem with my clarification submission? But when I clicked on it, it was Ansel Crane who posted it. Ansel Crane is a person, and even his nickname is directly his own name. In addition to a link to the network disk, his contribution only has 2 paragraphs. I know that there will be stinky fools who make rumors about me. 24-hour high-definition uncut version of the video is here. I have always been clean and self-conscious, and I don't want to slander my innocence. In addition, I know who anonymously submitted to slander me. I only give you 1 hour. If you don't see your real name, apology to Eve Wallace, classmate, who was implicated by me, on the confession wall an hour later. Don't blame me for calling the police, uncle, to arrest you. Ansel Crane turned the slander on me. At the moment, I was the only one in the dormitory, which was surprisingly quiet, and I could only hear a heartbeat, which was getting heavier and heavier. After eating dinner without knowing anything, Candace Valentine sent a voice. Look, Eve Wallace, this crazy woman Tammy Hansen has gone to Ansel Crane. I clicked on the video she sent, and it was still black at first, and it took a few seconds to move the camera to the hysterical Tammy Hansen. Ansel Crane, do you have to be so ruthless? Before Eve Wallace appeared, you had a crush on me. Hey, why is it that as soon as she appears, you only have her in your eyes? Someone laughed. Ansel Crane, silent. Okay, you, when did you get into a love debt? Ansel Crane, stunned and frightened, almost jumped up from the couch. Is there something wrong with you? When did I have a crush on you? If it weren't for you talking to Eve Wallace that time, I wouldn't even know what you look like. Impossible. Tammy Hansen wanted to step forward, but was immediately pulled by a girl. Last year, we played games together. You lost, and someone asked you if you had a crush on which girl in the room, and you pointed it at me? There are so many girls here. You just pointed at me. You obviously pointed at me. Tammy Hansen screamed. Ansel Crane asked a circle of friends round him on the spot. Some said that there was such a thing, and some said that he didn't remember, and finally he sighed. Sorry, I really don't remember. If it hurts you, then I apologize to you, but you're slandering Eve Wallace. You have to go to the wall of confession to set things up and apologize to her. Otherwise, I'll really call the police. Tammy Hansen stared at him blankly and burst into tears. Ansel Crane, you liar. The girl who came with her hurriedly pulled her away. End of video. I didn't know what it was like, but I didn't see anything on my phone. It was almost 12 o'clock when Tammy Hansen posted an apology post. Is it really Tammy Hansen? She and Eve Wallace have been at odds for a long time, but she didn't expect to be such a villain and be discovered. I have wronged Eve Wallace, and I sincerely apologize here. Didn't anyone snort Ansel Crane and Eve Wallace? The scene of him carrying Eve Wallace on his back is really pink bubbles that are about to burst out of the screen. The reviews are still going crazy, but I've lost interest in reading them. There is a relief that innocence has been confirmed, but more of a confusion about Ansel Crane. The night tossed and turned, and it was not until dawn that I fell asleep in a daze. Candace Valentine pulled me out of bed. The food I brought you from Yuki's Ioasu. Get up and eat it quickly. I was pressed to the table to eat without washing my face, and Candace Valentine stared at me with wide, sparkling eyes. Hey, what are your plans for Ansel Crane? I sighed. Miss, how can I be in the mood to fall in love now? Then you don't have a little bit of a heart for him. Yes, but not to the point where he has to. How can you not be impressed? But whether he likes it or my heart, it's still very shallow at this moment. The uncertainty of the future is too great, and if the ending is destined to end dismally, then I would rather be friends forever. Candace Valentine didn't ask any more, only threw down the sentence. My brother will return to China next weekend, and there will be a banquet at home, and there will be a lot of company bosses coming at that time. You know Tilda, and then stepped on his high heels and left. I knew she wanted me to have more job opportunities, but after my grandmother died, I didn't have any worries and wanted to go further afield, wanting to see the bigger world. 2 days ago, my boss asked me if I wanted to study abroad for a PhD, and if I did, he would write me a letter of recommendation and introduce me to a good supervisor. The opportunity is rare and I would love to go, but there was still a hint of hesitation that I couldn't figure out. That's it. Let's explain it to Candace Valentine after the banquet. Candace Valentine's older brother, Nathan Valentine, went abroad to study finance after college. I often hear Candace Valentine say that he is a boring person in life, only interested in studying and working. But there is no doubt that Nathan Valentine is the best person in Valentine's family, which makes her want to meddle in the family's company. But no one pays attention to her, and can only do some small business, relative to the entire Valentine family. Of course, Eve Wallace, I'm serious. You might as well marry my brother. How about you help me secretly set him up, and then I will open a company for you, and make a lot of money together. It wasn't until I saw Nathan Valentine that I mentally labeled Candace Valentine's words as misleading. A tailor-made suit, from head to toe, exudes the atmosphere of a long-standing position. Somewhat apprehensively, I followed Candace Valentine closer to say hello. I've heard Candace Valentine talk about you. Don't be inhibited. Have fun today. The cold and noble future boss smiled shallowly, making people feel at home. Hey, Eve Wallace, I feel like my brother is interested in you. Don't you really think about that suggestion? What advice? Candace Valentine, what are you going to do? I warn you, don't make trouble. Ansel Crane came out of nowhere. I don't know what's going on. He and Candace Valentine don't seem to have a good aura, and they pinch each other when they meet. What else can I suggest? Of course, Eve Wallace should consider my brother. Candace Valentine's eyes rolled to the sky, and before Ansel Crane could retort, she pulled me away. The purpose of this banquet is to announce that Nathan Valentine, who is in the circle, is going to gradually take over Valentine's house. As Nathan Valentine's own sister, there are many people who need Candace Valentine to socialize. I pushed her to get busy, and found a quiet corner to eat a small cake. I wanted to end the banquet, but I didn't expect a strange girl to suddenly stand in front of me. You're Eve Wallace. I nodded, confused. May I ask who you are? I heard that you sold alcohol at nightclubs, and you worked as a tender model, and you fascinated Ansel Crane. With that, she turned her head to look at Nathan Valentine in the crowd. What? Did you come today to hook up with Nathan Valentine? I looked at the girl, wearing a haute couture dress, with a proud expression, and she was clear about the rumors about me. You listened to Tammy Hansen about these rumors, right? Seeing that she was stunned, I stood up and took a step forward. I don't know who you are, but I see that you are a decent person. Therefore, it is better for you to be decent for some people to slander me. After saying that, I wanted to leave by mistake, but she grabbed my arm. Has anyone told you that you look so tall that you hate it? Then, before I could react, she pushed me into the arms of a fat-headed, big-eared man. I screamed in fright and struggled to get out of the way. Ouch, Tilda, where did the little beauty come from? Throw yourself into your arms. Go and be happy with your brother tonight. As he spoke, he tried to restrain me, and tried to drag me to the door while saying obscene words. I chuckled in my heart. It seems that the two of them are in a group. I struggled to call for help, and I heard the girl who had just pushed me shout, "Is this another beautiful woman throwing herself into her arms?" The noisy banquet hall was quiet for a moment, and I don't know if Candace Valentine or Ansel Crane heard my cry for help, but I called out Candace Valentine's name while it was quiet. As soon as I shouted, I heard a muffled grunt from the man who controlled me, and then I was kicked out. I looked up tremblingly, and saw Ansel Crane with an angry look on his face, rushing up and swinging his fist at the man. The people around them dodged and formed a circle. The girl was in the crowd of onlookers and threw a defiant smile at me. I stepped forward and grabbed Ansel Crane's fist, and he turned to look at me with red eyes. Calm down. This is a banquet at Valentine's house. Don't make a big fuss. Ansel Crane got up and kicked the man on the ground again, who had already been beaten to the ground. I took his hand and pulled him out, but I'm so unwilling. Why? Being bullied and slandered. Can I just walk away? I didn't do anything, and it's not my fault. I stopped abruptly and looked at the girl. I don't know you, and I didn't provoke you, but you took advantage of Tammy Hansen's rumors and slander me, and you colluded with this man to destroy me in order to achieve your goals. Seriously, did your elders, your parents, and your teachers teach you this from childhood to adulthood? A girl's reputation, even a person, can be ruined and betrayed? Right. The girl's face was a little pale, but she still held her head high and said disdainfully, "What's a good thing about you? It's just a fishing girl who wants to climb the bed. Don't think that climbing the branch is a phoenix. This branch, you can't stay. Be careful if the wind blows, and you fall into the mud." UTM, shut up. Ansel Crane was furious and was stopped by me. Why? Yikes. Isn't that a good cousin to Tammy Hansen? Candace Valentine cut through the crowd and walked over with Nathan Valentine. She looked at me, and I shook my head to say it was okay. Then she laughed. Nancy Ellen, you have a family of all generations, and you naturally don't know about human suffering. Yes, Eve Wallace went to my clubhouse to sell alcohol and work as a model car, because her only relative, her grandmother, was lying in the hospital waiting for money to live. If a man has no money, his life is worthless. You'd better pray that you'll never understand. Oh, by the way, my clubhouse is a high-end clubhouse, and I will never do anything against a woman's will. Men and women, we pay our wages and pay our taxes in full, and you and Tammy Hansen will tell you again, and we'll see you in court. If it weren't for the fact that there are so many people now, I would really like to hug Candace Valentine and kiss her. She is too handsome. Eve Wallace, I'm sorry. You go back to rest first. Eve Wallace, I scared you today, and tomorrow Candace Valentine and I will treat you to dinner. Nathan Valentine said it very sincerely, but Ansel Crane snorted and said in a weird way, you don't have to eat. Who knows if you'll run into any more garbage. After saying that, he pulled me all the way and walked quickly, until I got into the car. I could take a good breath. Thank you, Ansel Crane. I really didn't expect her to be so vicious. Ansel Crane didn't look at me, started the car and walked out of the garage. Don't thank you? It's time for you to pay it back. Looking at his calm but secretly angry face, I obediently closed my mouth. The next day, Candace Valentine took 2 designer bags for me to choose from, saying that Nathan Valentine paid for them, and asked me to choose one. I resolutely didn't want to, so she had to stuff it into my arms. You don't want any of them. You don't want money, do you? In that case, you go to my brother and ask for it. But I don't. I had no choice but to accept it. Candace Valentine also invited me out to dinner. Candace Valentine, spare me. I'm going back to the lab to run the data. And besides, I have something to tell you. I want to go abroad for a PhD. If it goes well, I'll be gone after the summer. Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Go to United States. The boss recommended it. I didn't think about it until after my grandmother died, and it took me 2 days to make up my mind to go. I didn't mean not to tell you. I watched her face carefully, for fear she would give me another pop. Unexpectedly, Candace Valentine was very excited. That's great. When you come back, your name will be even more famous. We will combine our swords, and we will definitely make my brother bow down. I wonder if Candace Valentine was deducted pocket money by Nathan Valentine when she was a child. Otherwise, how could she be so keen to beat him when it comes to making money? I laughed and laughed with Candace Valentine, and when she saw that I was still busy, she didn't hard pull me to dinner, changed my clothes and left. I looked at the dim sunlight that poured into the room, and suddenly I felt a little sad. How do I talk to Ansel Crane? A few days later, a girl identified Tammy Hansen online by her real name, and bullied her in high school, causing her to have a perforated eardrum and hearing loss. While she was still a music student, public opinion exploded all at once. And that's not all. Nancy Ellen danced with a few black men in a bar abroad that day, and there were suspected drug use in the picture. The bright red word burst dyed most of the hot search lists. Valentine's family issued an apology statement and gave the victim a large amount of compensation. Tammy Hansen never came to school again, and Candace Valentine told me that she was sent abroad by her family. The Ellen family was originally going to marry the Valentine family. Now he was rejected by Nathan Valentine, and stopped working with Ellen's family. As for Nancy Ellen, Ellen's family issued a statement that she had cut her up. The Ellen family is now struggling with broken partnerships and shortfall in funding. Finally, Candace Valentine said mysteriously, you know what? Nancy Ellen has liked Ansel Crane for a long time, and the old man of the Crane family likes her very much, and secretly thinks of herself as the prospective young grandmother of the Crane family. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Candace Valentine said cautiously, actually, Ansel Crane has done a lot of work in the current situation between the Ellen family and the Valentine family. My head was a mess, and I didn't know when Candace Valentine was gone. It's time to talk to Ansel Crane soon. But before I could find an opportunity, my boss told me to go to Peking with him for a meeting. And by the way, he introduced me to a professor abroad. I had to pack my bags and go to the meeting with my boss first. The meeting was boring and long, and I finally got through to the end, and I followed my boss around socializing. While chatting with the beautiful and gentle Marion, Ansel Crane walked up in a suit and demeanor. My eyes widened in surprise, but he smiled softly, walked up to Marion, called out, Mommy, and then looked at me, with those eyes with a gentle smile. My head was still down, and my boss, a young old man who had always been serious, had already started to greet with a smile on his face. Ouch tilde, this little hairy head is so big. Do you have a partner? Every day when you don't go home, what girl can like it? Marion said and looked at me. Does Eve Wallace have a boyfriend? My boss smiled and waved his hand. No hurry. No hurry. Eve Wallace is going to study abroad for a PhD, and it is appropriate to talk about it after reading. With a bang, the big stone in my heart suddenly fell to the ground so hard that I didn't dare to look at him again. I heard Marion say with some pity, "That's going to be a few years." It wasn't until I was parting that I mustered up the courage to look up, and Ansel Crane didn't move with a smiling face, and said a polite goodbye to my boss before leaving with Marion. They didn't even glance at me. The boss still has a lot of old things to talk about, so I went back to the hotel first. There are messages on the phone from time to time, but none of them are Ansel Crane's. The bitterness that came from somewhere spread from the eyes to the tip of the tongue, and from the tip of the tongue to the bottom of the heart, so bitter that my whole body shrunk into a ball. Another message, beef. But I'm afraid of another disappointment. Fingers rubbed over the screen for a few moments before they opened them ruthlessly. Sure enough, it's not. I curled up in bed for a long time, and finally made up my mind to send a Weshit message to Ansel Crane. Are you still in Haikang? Can we meet in person? I let out a long sigh of relief, ready to wait for a night without a reply. Unexpectedly, within 10 seconds, a phone call from Ansel Crane came. Come out. Just 2 simple words. I was stunned for a moment, but when I woke up, I put on my slippers and ran to the elevator. Around the corner I tripped over a raised carpet and tossed my slippers a few steps away. Someone picked up their slippers and walked towards me against the light. I stood in a daze against the wall, watching the man crouch in front of me, holding my ankle with one hand and putting my slippers on with the other. The heart has never been softer than it is now, as if it is wrapped in honey. A voice was bewitching me. Just admit that you like him. It's much better to be greedy for a while than to be angry. I was dragged back to my room by Ansel Crane. As soon as I entered, he pushed me behind the door. The lights dimmed, and Ansel Crane pinched my cheek with one hand and gritted his teeth and said, Eve Wallace, you're good. You're so good. I've always been sincere to you. But what about you? Will you wait until you go abroad to remember to notify me? I'm an insignificant person in your heart, right? The pain in his eyes stabbed my heart. No, it's not like that. I raised my hand to cover his eyes, and tiptoed to kiss him. The undisciplined kiss was instantly dominated by Ansel Crane's anti-guest. He grabbed me by the back of my neck with one hand and pressed me into his arms, and with the other he put his arm around my waist, so that my standing feet touched the ground, and he immediately leaned down and kissed me. The kiss was ruthless and urgent. With a bit of grievance, I felt ashamed, and let him take what he wanted. The dim light created this ambiguity, and the rising heat burned my consciousness to the ground. It didn't take long for Ansel Crane's movements to soften and I regained my lost thoughts. He looked down at me, his burning breath spraying on my face. Don't cry. I rubbed my tears on the clothes on his chest, and finally burst into tears. Ansel Crane, I like you, but I don't want to be greedy with you for a while. I want to be with you for a long time. Ansel Crane kissed me in the eye. It's my delusion, your greed, your long-term morning and twilight. I want them all. Then the light shattered into a room of stars, rising and falling with the heat. Suddenly, a hot wind swept in, and the stars were swept up into the sky, scattering like fireworks. Finally, Ansel Crane kissed me in the morning light, and the intoxicating whisper in my ears, I am waiting for you, in your future. Before leaving, a Borg Ellen came to me, and I thought it was related to Nancy Ellen, so I didn't see him. But the man didn't give up, and blocked me downstairs in the dormitory. In desperation, I went to the coffee shop with him. He asked me to see his grandfather, and he said, when the old man went to the countryside when he was young, he once made a lifelong agreement with a country girl. But then he went back to the city and encountered a family accident, and when he went back to find the girl, he could not find her. Since then, I have been worried about it for the rest of my life, and my conscience is difficult until the last time I saw you at Valentine's house, and I regretted it even more. Eve Wallace, chances are, you're my cousin. I was so shocked that I sat there for a long time. Grandpa is a little sick. This is the shame of his life, and he wants to see you. Whatever the outcome, the Ellen family will cover all the expenses of your trip, and if you want to marry into the Crane family, the Ellen family will help you. Borg Ellen spoke sincerely, but calmly sipping his coffee. After the shock, I laughed detachedly. Borg Ellen, I'm sorry. My grandmother never mentioned Ellen's family, and I have no intention of clinging to it. From now on, let's continue to return to the bridge, and return to the road. I got up and left, thinking of my grandmother, who had been lonely all my life, and took my hand and said, Eve Wallace, women are true on their own. Don't rely on others. My grandmother was never trapped by the moon when she was young, and I didn't. Summer is coming to an end, and I am rushing to my future while the cicadas are still singing. I haven't been back home for 3 years, and every time Candace Valentine comes to see me, what's the matter with you two? Don't you even see each other when you're in love? 3 years is a long time, but it's the path I have to walk with him. If he can't wait, then I'm willing to lose. Candace Valentine asked a few times, but when I saw that she avoided asking again, she just kept me informed of Ansel Crane. He's been on interviews. He's on TV again. He worked hard to win a multinational business in March, and the company is thriving. He had a scandal. He exploded, and it was clarified late that night. I talked to Ansel Crane on the phone and chatted on WeChat, and I didn't ask about any scandals, only responded to his thoughts, congratulated him on his success, and understood his efforts and dedication. I think I'm a little meaner, and I'm a little bit of a way out, but whether this retreat is for myself, or for my relationship with him is not clear. It wasn't until I got on the plane back home with my luggage in a nervous mood and came out pushing my luggage to see Ansel Crane standing there with a bunch of sunflowers, in the middle of the crowd. There are so many people, but I just saw him at a glance. His eyes lit up when he saw me. I ran to him, and crashed into his open arms. We were greedy for a while, but now we will run to our long time, towards the morning and twilight, the end.